One of the others leaned forward, hand near his belt. You making this legal? I'm making it human. Silence held for a breath too long. Then the lead man spat on the ground. Not worth it. He yanked his reins, turned his horse. The others followed. Dust and hoofprints faded into the approaching darkness. Jack waited a long moment before lowering his weapon. From behind the stable door, Issa stepped out slowly. You could have been shot, she said. Jack looked at her. So could you. Her arms tightened around the baby. What if they return? Then we'll remind them what kind of man lives here. She looked down, then up again. Miss Issa, he added gently. If you prefer to be called something else, I can manage. She shook her head. No, she whispered. It was never the name I despised, just the way it was spoken, and for the first time, she said her complete name aloud. Issa Lorini. Jack nodded once. Pleasure to meet you properly, Miss Lorini, and though the wind still carried the scent of dust and danger, something warmer settled on the porch that night, the fragile breath of someone beginning to believe she could belong. The night air had grown colder than usual. A gentle breeze stirred the chimes Jack had hung beneath the eaves, their notes soft and scattered like broken melodies. Inside the cabin, Issa curled tightly on the bed, one arm around Samuel, the other pressed against her ribs as if holding herself together. Her breathing came in shallow gasps. Sleep had finally claimed her, then the nightmare came. She was back in the straw, knees bent beneath her weight, blood soaking the earth below her. Her screams mixed with the howls of beasts and laughter, cruel, wheezing laughter. Boots kicked near her belly. Men shouted above her head. Not worth feeding. She's just a hole with a heartbeat. Hands seized her legs, pulled the child out before she'd even finished screaming. Then cold, endless cold, she woke with a gasp, clutching Samuel so tightly the baby whimpered. Her dress clung to her skin with perspiration. Her mouth tasted of iron and dust. She sat up quickly, breathing wildly. That's when she saw the light. Outside the cabin, through the small window, a single oil lamp flickered. Jack sat in an old wooden chair, coat draped over his shoulders, hat in his lap. The lamp burned low. Beside him, Issa blinked. Her voice cracked when she tried to speak, so she opened the door instead. He looked up as it creaked. Bad dream? He asked quietly. She didn't answer. He stood slowly and carefully, as if moving too quickly would shatter the air between them. He picked up the tin cup from the small side table and walked toward her, steps steady on the porch planks. I figured you might need this. He offered the cup. She hesitated before accepting it. The scent hit her first: lavender, chamomile, and something earthy. Not sweet, not bitter, just warm. She cradled the cup with both hands, letting the steam rise between her fingers. Jack didn't ask about the dream, didn't try to tell her what she'd endured. He simply said, no one's going to harm you again, Isapare. Not while you're under this roof. She looked up slowly, eyes glassy. How can you promise that? I don't promise, he said. I just keep watch. She took a sip. The tea scalded her tongue, but it helped. Jack didn't move to go back inside. He sat again in the chair, letting the silence fill the porch between them. I used to watch the stars with my brother, he said after a while, before he joined the Rangers. We would count the ones we thought were meant for us, like each one was waiting to be discovered. Issa said nothing, but she looked up. The sky was cloudless, so many stars it made the darkness feel crowded. She whispered, which one is yours? Jack gestured toward the left. That one there, next to the crooked line. Been following it since I was 13, and it hasn't led you anywhere? It led me here, he said softly. She looked at him, truly looked this time. His eyes weren't soft, but they were steady. The kind of steady you could lean on if you ever dared. She nodded once, then stepped back inside the cabin. Jack remained on the porch. That night, for the first time in years, Issa slept all the way through. No jolts, no screams, no knife in her. And only the soft rise and fall of the child's chest beside hers. And outside the cabin, the lamp flickered once, then steadied, its flame burning through the dark, watched by a man who said little but meant everything. The morning sun crept slowly across the fields, casting long golden lines over the fence posts and rows of corn just beginning to sprout. Issa rose before the rooster now, wrapped Samuel in a worn sling, and stepped out into the dirt with bare feet and quiet purpose. She no longer stayed hidden. She no longer watched the world from shadows. She moved like someone learning to belong. Her days began with goats and ended with fresh bread cooling on the sill. She knew how to mend a fence now, how to keep a fire going through the wind. She even smiled sometimes, not at anyone in particular, but to herself, like a secret kept safe. On the final page of her journal, Isa wrote, "I was once purchased for less than livestock, but I was cherished like a human being, and that, in the end, is the only value that ever truly mattered." She closed the book and placed it on the shelf. Outside, Sparrow was already calling for a bedtime story, and the homestead, glowing with the soft gold of evening light, waited for no one but welcomed everyone. In the Old West, not every hero arrived with a badge or a bullet. Some simply offered a woman a bed and let her rest without fear. Some love stories don't begin with kisses. They begin with compassion. If this tale moved your soul, don't ride away just yet. Subscribe to Heart of the West for more unforgettable tales of redemption, forbidden romance, and hope rising from the dust of lawless territories. Because out here, love isn't always loud, but when it's genuine, it rescues. She was sold while her birth wounds still wept, yet one cattleman purchased her freedom just to offer shelter and rest. The Texas frontier, dying summer of 1879, the merciless sun gazed down upon Calico Ridge like a vengeful deity. Clouds of earth swirled beneath the heavy steps of ranchers, wanderers, and fortune-seekers, all crowding toward the town center where a crude platform rose like a monument to human suffering. Upon its weathered planks knelt a young woman, unshod and bound in chains. Though her name was Isa, not one soul had bothered to learn it. Her torn garment hung about her frame like smoke from a dying fire, stained crimson and brown. Dark patches colored the fabric from her knees downward. Her limbs shook beneath her own weight. Against her breast, an infant mewled weakly, face flushed and unnaturally still. Heavy iron circled her right leg, secured to the wooden post. The metal had rubbed her skin raw. "Gather round, gentlemen," the seller shouted, standing proud in his dark waistcoat, his grin stretched wide as a serpent's jaw. "2 souls for 1 price, friends. Young enough to heal and comes with fresh blood to build your dynasty." Cruel chuckles rippled through the assembled men. "She's still dripping," someone jeered. "Fresh as morning dew," the auctioneer replied with a laugh. "Rare chance to name a child that ain't your own making." Isa kept her eyes fixed on the boards beneath her knees. The crowd's racket faded into the rhythm of her racing heart, her mouth pressed against her baby's head, her sole act of resistance. "No tears, no pleas, beginning at 50, the seller bellowed. 50 for both mother and child. Still breathing, still fresh. "Who'll start?" 70 came a call. Then 85. The bidding rose like heat from sun-baked earth. With each shout, Isa's breathing grew more labored. 150. 200 from the man with the wooden pick between his teeth, then a voice cut through the chaos. Steady, hard as granite. 300. Silence crashed over the square like a thunderclap. Every head swiveled. The man stood at the crowd's edge, tall and stern-faced. His wide-brimmed hat cast shadows across most of his features, but his clenched jaw showed like a steel trap ready to spring. His long coat was weathered, his boots worn. He appeared unremarkable until you glimpsed his eyes. 300, he declared again, louder this time. The seller stammered. "Sir, perhaps you misheard. Heard fine enough. What's your purpose with the goods?" Someone yelled from the throng. The stranger stepped forward, his boots striking the planks like hammer blows. "To offer her rest, to grant her sleep. Nothing more." "Hell of a sum for charity," muttered a voice. The man turned toward the heckler. "Anyone care to bid higher?" Silence stretched. His hand settled on the pistol at his waist, not drawing, merely resting. "No? Then quiet your mouth and ring that bell." The auctioneer cleared his throat and struck his gavel. "Sold." The stranger climbed the steps. Isa didn't lift her gaze until she heard the whisper of his blade severing the chain from her ankle. The iron fell with a final crash. He extended his hand. She refused to take it. "What do you expect from me?" she whispered. "Sleep," came his steady reply. "Rest. Then we'll speak as equals." She studied him for a long moment, then struggled to her feet. The baby whimpered softly. He glanced at the child, then back at her. "Do you possess a name?" She hesitated. "Isapare," he nodded. "Jack Morrell." He turned toward the staring crowd, still trying to comprehend what they'd witnessed. Jack paid them no mind. He placed his hand gently on Isa's back. "This way." With the warm chain lying forgotten on the platform behind her, she descended from the block barefoot, bloodstained, but no longer alone. The town watched them depart, a broken girl and a mysterious stranger, walking away from people who had Once traded humans like livestock. Not one person followed. Not one person dared. The path to Jack Morrell's spread wound through rolling hills dotted with cedar and stone, quiet, yet alive. Coyotes sang at twilight, and stars pierced the sky. Before the final ridge revealed a stretch of land bordered by fencing and lengthy shadows. Jack spoke little during the journey. Isa clutched the infant against her chest, her gaze sweeping every fence post, every expanse of open ground. Her feet throbbed from walking, her legs ached from hours of kneeling, yet she voiced no complaints. The pain was expected, familiar. Jack led her behind the main dwelling. Past the corral, beside the horse barn, stood a worn one-room cabin with a small stove, a narrow bed, and a crib that Jack had mended that morning with mismatched nails. "This belongs to you," he said simply, pushing open the door. Isa entered slowly, as if anticipating deception. The bed held fresh linens. The stove glowed with warm embers. A single blanket lay folded precisely at the foot. She remained silent. So did the baby. Jack set a kettle to warm on the stove, then placed a bowl of porridge on the table beside the crib. "I'll return come morning," he said. "You require rest. More importantly, the child needs a mother who isn't watching for threats." He turned to leave. "Wait." Isa's voice was soft, barely used. Jack paused. She moved to the crib, laying the baby down. Then, without facing him, she said, "Should you attempt to touch me, I'll cut your throat while you sleep." He nodded. "That's fair." Then he stepped outside, closed the door, and left her in solitude. The night stretched longer than expected, colder too. Isa didn't sleep. She fed the child from the bottle he'd left, wrapped him tighter, then drew a small blade from beneath the baby's covering and tucked it under her pillow for safety. She kept listening for footsteps, for locks turning, for breathing that wasn't her own. But nothing came, only silence. Dawn broke gently. The baby stirred. Isa sat up, instantly alert, knife still in her grip. Then she noticed it on the crib's edge, a square of white fabric, worn at the corners, embroidered with delicate thread, tiny bluebirds stitched along the borders. A handkerchief, not a threat but a gift. She touched it with careful fingers when Jack knocked and entered. He carried only a bottle of warm milk and a jar of mashed fruit. She watched him like a wild animal. He set the items down and gestured toward the cloth. "My mother crafted that when I was young, for my infant sister. She passed that winter." Isa blinked. "Why offer it to me?" Jack met her eyes. "Because your child deserves better than iron bonds and dirt floors." She said nothing. He reached into his coat and placed a soft bundle of clothing, small baby things, patched but clean, beside the jar. "I'll return by evening." She stopped him once more. "Why do this?" Jack's response was quiet. "Because nobody ever asked how you wish to live." She looked at him for a long while, the knife still hidden beneath her leg. Finally, she asked, "What if I don't know?" Jack offered a slight smile. "Then I suppose you begin with rest." He departed again. This time she watched him go, and when the door clicked softly shut, Isa finally settled on the bed, placed the baby near her heart, and closed her eyes. Not completely, not yet, but enough for the darkness to feel less harsh. Days drifted by like slow-moving clouds across the Texas sky. Isa rarely left the small cabin, except to draw water or hang the baby's clothes to dry. The ranch remained peaceful, save for the rustle of horses and Jack's distant whistling as he worked the pens. She never asked questions. Jack never forced answers. But trust, like seeds scattered in hard soil, began to take root. Each morning, he brought breakfast, never more than warm bread and milk, and set it quietly on her doorstep. Sometimes he left a book with pressed flowers inside, other times a blanket. He never spoke more than necessary. The baby, whom she now called Samuel in her thoughts but dared not say aloud, grew stronger. Isa began humming again under her breath, when she believed no one was listening. Still, she never told Jack her full name. No one had ever asked it before. The townspeople still called her the girl from the auction, or worse, property. That one, the market woman. They avoided her at the trading post, stared at the scarred ring around her ankle. But Jack called her something different. Miss Isapare. The first time he said it, she'd been drawing water. "Morning, Miss Isapare." She'd frozen, the bucket rope burning her palm. "What did you say?" she asked cautiously. He tipped his hat back. "Your name? I figure you have one." She stared, then with something approaching wonder, whispered, "No one has ever spoken it that way." Jack shrugged. "That seems wrong." And he walked away. 3 nights later, just before sunset, thunder didn't roll from the heavens. It came on horseback, 4 riders raised dust at the ranch gates. Men in canvas coats, their faces familiar in the worst possible way. Isa had seen one of them at the square, laughing when she bled through the floorboards. She was in the cabin when she heard the gate slam and voices bark orders. Jack emerged from the barn, shotgun already in hand, calm as a man who'd seen worse. Evening, one rider said, his teeth yellowed. We're here for what belongs to us. Jack's voice was low. This is private property. The man pointed toward the cabin. She's stolen goods. A missing asset from the flesh trade registry took off before her paperwork cleared. She bled through her dress. Jack replied, I paid for her outright. The man laughed. Then maybe we refund you and call it square. Jack didn't laugh. He stepped forward. On this ranch, property doesn't breathe. That girl has lungs and a name.